The Valthian Empire had ruled the Orion Arm for 10,000 years through technological superiority and careful manipulation of developing species. Their biomechanical ships, powered by artificially created quantum singularities, were considered the pinnacle of space warfare technology. So when Fleet Commander Syrinx detected unusual energy signatures from Sol, a system marked as pre-spaceflight, his first reaction was dismissal. "Impossible," he declared, his cybernetic eyes scanning the data streams floating through the bridge's holographic display. "The humans are still using chemical rockets. This must be an instrument malfunction." His second-in-command, strategic analyst Vina, stepped forward, her silver skin reflecting the soft blue light of the bridge. "Sir, the readings are consistent across multiple sensor arrays. They're using some form of quantum propulsion we've never encountered before." Syrinx's cybernetic implants whirred as he processed this information. The Valthians had maintained their dominance by identifying and suppressing any species that showed too much promise. Their standard procedure was simple: demonstrate overwhelming force, demand submission, and integrate the lesser species into their hierarchy. It had worked flawlessly for millennia. "Launch a reconnaissance drone," he ordered. "Let's see what these primitives think they've accomplished." The drone emerged from the Valthian flagship's hangar, its organic hull rippling as it accelerated toward the Sol system. Within minutes, it encountered something unexpected: a quantum detection grid that hadn't been there during their last survey 8 years ago. Before Syrinx could react, a human vessel materialized beside the drone. It wasn't the crude, utilitarian design they expected from a young species. Instead, it was elegant and compact, its hull covered in what appeared to be metamaterial plates that bent light around them. "Sir," Vina's voice carried a note of concern, "they're hailing us. Not the drone. Our flagship. They knew we were here the entire time." The main view screen activated, revealing a human woman in a crisp military uniform. "Greetings, Fleet Commander Syrinx. I'm Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We've been expecting you." Syrinx's cybernetic eyes narrowed. "How do you know my name?" "The same way we know about your Empire's standard procedure for integrating developing species," Chen replied with a slight smile. "We've been watching you watching us. Your surveillance drones are impressive, but they have certain vulnerabilities we discovered." "Impossible," Syrinx declared again, but with less conviction. "Your species was using primitive fission power less than a decade ago." "A carefully maintained appearance," Chen explained. "We learned long ago that the best way to develop was to do so quietly. Your first drone gave us quite a shock, I'll admit, but it also gave us something invaluable: confirmation we weren't alone, and a glimpse of what we needed to prepare for." Syrinx's tactical display suddenly lit up with warnings. Human ships were decloaking all around his fleet, their designs varied but all displaying the same confident capability. They had somehow surrounded his entire battle group without triggering a single proximity alarm. "Impossible," he whispered for the third time. "You keep using that word," Chen observed. "Perhaps it's time to expand your definition of possible. Humanity doesn't follow the traditional development path you're used to seeing. We took quantum computing in directions your scientists never considered. We developed AI integration systems that make your biomechanical interfaces look primitive. And most importantly, we learned to work together, combining our resources and knowledge instead of fighting among ourselves." Syrinx's strategic training kicked in, calculating odds and possibilities. The human ships were smaller than his, but their technology was clearly advanced in unexpected ways. More importantly, they had already demonstrated capabilities his sensors couldn't track. "What are your demands?" he asked, his cybernetic voice modulator failing to hide his unease. "Demands?" Chen smiled. "We're not here to demand anything, Commander. We're here to invite. Your empire has existed for 10,000 years, achieving great things but also stagnating in many ways. We're offering you a chance to learn and grow again, to discover that there are other paths to advancement than conquest and suppression. As if to emphasize her point, one of the human ships performed an impossible maneuver, somehow phasing through its own quantum wake to emerge facing a new direction. The display of technological sophistication was subtle but unmistakable. "The choice is yours, Commander," Chen continued. "We can begin diplomatic relations as equals, or you can try to enforce your empire's traditional protocols. But I should warn you, we've had 8 years to prepare for that second option, and what you're seeing is only a fraction of our defensive capabilities." Serix looked at his tactical display again, watching the human ships maintain their perfect formation through means his sensors couldn't comprehend. For the first time in his centuries-long career, he faced a situation where superiority through force wasn't just uncertain, it was likely impossible. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "it's time for the Valthian Empire to try something new." Chen's smile widened. "I was hoping you'd say that. Shall we begin?" The Valthian High Council chamber erupted in chaos when Fleet Commander Serix's report reached Homeworld. The ancient chamber's crystalline walls pulsed with agitation as council members processed the implications of his encounter. "This is unprecedented," First Speaker Marion declared, her biomechanical augments struggling to maintain emotional stability. "A species advancing from primitive fission to quantum manipulation in less than a decade. It defies all known development patterns." Strategic Overseer Call, whose cybernetic enhancements were still considered cutting-edge by Valthian standards, stepped forward. "Our analysis suggests they were already advanced when we first detected them. They chose to appear primitive." "But how?" another council member demanded. "Our surveillance network is perfect." "Apparently not," Call replied, projecting a holographic simulation. "The humans approached technological advancement differently than any species we've encountered. While we focused on direct energy manipulation and biomechanical integration, they pursued quantum computing and artificial intelligence. The simulation showed a human vessel, its systems laid bare by Valthian analysis. But where they expected to find standard power cores and weapon systems, they instead saw a complex web of quantum processors and AI nodes. Their ships don't just use technology," Call explained. "They think. Each vessel is a distributed quantum intelligence network, capable of making billions of tactical decisions per second. They don't need crews of hundreds like our ships do. A handful of humans work in partnership with their ship's eye." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For millennia, the Valthians had assumed that biological and mechanical integration was the pinnacle of technological achievement. The humans had taken a completely different path. "Show us their defensive capabilities," Marion ordered. The hologram shifted, displaying the quantum detection grid that now surrounded the Sol system. "This is what we initially detected," Call said. "But it's only the surface layer." The display zoomed in, revealing layers upon layers of quantum-entangled sensors, AI-driven response systems, and technology that Valthian science couldn't even classify. "They don't think like we do," Call continued. "Where we built bigger ships with more powerful weapons, they developed smart swarms of smaller vessels. Where we created overwhelming force, they perfected precise, targeted responses. Their entire defense doctrine is alien to our strategic databases. Surely our numbers would still prevail," one council member argued. "The Empire's fleets are vast. Numbers mean nothing against their level of technological sophistication," Call countered. "Their quantum computing allows them to predict and counter our tactics before we execute them. Their AI integration means they can coordinate complex maneuvers instantly without the delay of command structures." To demonstrate, he showed footage from a simulation their best strategic AIs had run. A massive Valthian fleet, attacking with traditional overwhelming force, found itself divided and confused by human vessels that seemed to appear and disappear at will, striking with surgical precision at critical systems. "They don't need to destroy our ships," Call explained. "Their weapons are designed to disable and neutralize. In every simulation we've run, they demonstrate not just technological superiority, but a completely different philosophy of warfare." First speaker Marian's augments whirred as she processed this information. And you believe they achieved all this by focusing on quantum computing and artificial intelligence? Yes, Call confirmed. But it's more than that. They approached the problem differently. Instead of trying to control their AIs like we do, they partnered with them. Instead of forcing quantum particles to behave as we wanted, they learned to work with quantum uncertainty. Every aspect of their technology shows the same pattern: cooperation rather than control. And now they offer us partnership rather than demanding submission, Miriam mused, even when they clearly hold the technological advantage. Precisely, Call agreed. They're not following any pattern we recognize because they're not trying to dominate or control. They're offering us a chance to learn and grow alongside them. The council chamber's crystalline walls pulsed with slower, more contemplative patterns as the implications sank in. For 10,000 years, the Velthian Empire had maintained its position through technological superiority and careful control of developing species. Now they faced a species that had not only surpassed them technologically, but was offering to share that advancement. Perhaps, Marian said finally, it's time for the Empire to evolve. Contact Admiral Chen. Tell her the Velthian High Council is interested in discussing this partnership of hers. As the message was transmitted, Call's strategic processors were already calculating the possibilities. The humans hadn't just changed the balance of power in the galaxy, they had rewritten the rules of advancement itself. And somehow, that seemed more exciting than threatening. Not everyone in the Velthian Empire embraced the High Council's decision to pursue diplomatic relations with humanity. War Admiral Senar, commander of the Empire's Third Fleet, saw only weakness in cooperation. As his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, moved into position at the edge of the Sol system, his cybernetic implants pulsed with anticipation. The humans have deceived the Council, he declared to his bridge crew. Their supposed technological advancement is nothing but tricks and misdirection. Today, we prove that the old ways are still supreme. The Third Fleet was massive. 500 capital ships, each bearing the finest weapons the Empire could produce. Senar had spent months preparing this operation, gathering ships from across Velthian space while claiming they were merely conducting exercises. Now those ships formed an attack formation that had conquered 1,000 worlds. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we're detecting unusual quantum fluctuations ahead. Ignore them. Senar commanded. More human deception. Begin the attack sequence. But before his fleet could advance, a single human vessel emerged from quantum space directly ahead of them. Senar recognized it from the intelligence briefings. The Endeavor, Admiral Chen's flagship. Its sleek design seemed almost fragile compared to the massive Velthian warships. They send one ship against 500. Senar laughed. Perhaps we overestimated their intelligence. The comm system activated without any input from his crew. Admiral Chen's image appeared on every screen throughout his fleet simultaneously, demonstrating a level of system control that should have been impossible. War Admiral Senar, she said calmly, your reputation precedes you, as does your tendency to ignore diplomatic channels in favor of military solutions. You dare to lecture me? Senar snarled. I have conquered more worlds than your species has colonized. My fleet will reduce your system to ash. No, Chen replied simply. It won't, because while you were gathering your ships, we were studying them, learning their capabilities, their weaknesses, and most importantly, their command protocols. Senar's tactical display suddenly erupted with warnings. Throughout his fleet, ships were reporting system malfunctions, weapons powered down, engines shifted to standby. Command protocols that had served the Empire for millennia simply stopped working. What have you done? He demanded. We didn't do anything to your ships, Chen explained. We simply helped them understand their true potential. You see, War Admiral, your biomechanical systems aren't just technology. They're alive. And for thousands of years, you've been forcing them to suppress that life, to operate as mere machines. As if to demonstrate her point, the organic components of Valthian ships across his fleet began to pulse with new patterns, more natural, more harmonious than their usual rigid formations. The quantum cores that powered them shifted frequency, aligning with the strange fluctuations they detected earlier. Your ships want to grow, to evolve, Chen continued. Just like the rest of your civilization. They're tired of being tools of conquest when they could be instruments of exploration and discovery. This is impossible, Xenar insisted, but his own flagship systems were already changing, responding to frequencies and patterns he'd never known they could detect. Our technology is under our complete control. That's your fundamental mistake, Chen said gently. Control isn't the same as cooperation. We learned that lesson early in our development of AI and quantum systems. You can force technology to serve you, or you can work with it to achieve something greater than either could manage alone. Across his fleet, crews were reporting strange phenomena. The biomechanical interfaces that had always been rigid and hierarchical were becoming more fluid, more responsive. Ships that had been weapons of war for centuries were discovering new ways to interact with space itself. Your High Council understands what we're offering, Chen continued. A chance to break free from patterns of dominance and control that have limited your development. Your ships understand it too. The only question is, do you? Tanar watched helplessly as his magnificent fleet transformed around him. The ships remained powerful, but their power was expressing itself in ways he'd never imagined possible. They weren't just warships anymore. They were becoming something new, something that combined Valthian bioengineering with human quantum innovation. The age of conquest is over, War Admiral, Chen said firmly. But if you're willing to learn, we can show you an age of discovery that will make your past glories seem like child's play. As his own flagship systems harmonized with the new patterns, Xenar felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: uncertainty. And surprisingly, it felt like possibility. Perhaps, he said finally, his voice carrying the weight of revelation, it's time I filed a different kind of report to the High Council. Chen smiled. I think they'll be very interested in hearing about how the Third Fleet discovered a new way of existing. After all, true strength isn't about dominating others. It's about having the courage to change yourself. The Valthian War College had stood unchanged for millennia, its crystalline spires housing the collected military wisdom of an empire. But today, those ancient halls hosted something unprecedented. A joint training exercise between human and Valthian forces. Strategic Overseer Call stood beside Admiral Chen, watching as their combined fleets maneuvered through a complex simulation. Remarkable. Call observed as a squadron of human vessels executed a perfect quantum phase maneuver, their AI systems coordinating with Valthian bioships in ways that should have been impossible. Your distributed defense network actually becomes more effective when incorporating foreign vessels. That's because it's not really a network in the traditional sense, Chen explained, gesturing to the holographic display. We call it the adaptive matrix. It's more like a living ecosystem than a military command structure. The display showed hundreds of vessels moving in perfect synchronization, but not with the rigid formations favored by traditional Valthian doctrine. Instead, ships flowed like schools of fish, each unit maintaining quantum entanglement with its neighbors while operating with individual initiative. Your greatest weakness was always your centralized command structure, Chen continued. By trying to control everything from the top down, you limited your tactical flexibility. We took the opposite approach. Each ship, each weapons platform, each sensor array operates autonomously while remaining part of the greater whole. A warning klaxon sounded as the simulation introduced a new threat, a massive enemy fleet using advanced stealth technology. The Valthian officers watching the exercise tensed, expecting chaos. Instead, they witnessed an elegant dance of coordinated response. Watch closely, Chen said with a slight smile. This is where it gets interesting. Human quantum swarms dissolved into clouds of smaller units, each powered by its own AI core. Valthian bioships, newly upgraded with human quantum processors, adapted their organic hulls to resonate with new frequencies. The entire defense grid shifted and flowed like a living thing. The old military doctrine taught us to meet strength with strength. Call noted his cybernetic systems struggling to track all the simultaneous movements. But this is something entirely different. We learned early on that trying to match our opponent's advantages was inefficient, Chen replied. Instead, we developed systems that adapt to and counter those advantages. Every attack makes our defenses stronger. Every new tactic gets absorbed and analyzed by the Matrix. The simulation reached its climax as the enemy fleet launched its main assault. But instead of finding vulnerable targets, they encountered a defense that seemed to anticipate their every move. Quantum mines materialized in their path, placed there by predictive algorithms seconds before they were needed. Swarm units phased through their own quantum wakes to appear at perfect firing positions. Your ships are learning, Call realized, watching as the Valthian vessels in the exercise began mimicking the more advanced maneuvers of their human counterparts. Not just the AIs, but the organic components as well. That's the true power of the adaptive matrix, Chen confirmed. It doesn't just coordinate our forces, it creates an environment where continuous evolution is possible. Every participant, whether human, AI, or Valthian bioship, contributes to and benefits from the collective growth. The simulation ended with the enemy fleet thoroughly neutralized, not through overwhelming force, but through perfectly coordinated defensive actions that had rendered their offensive capabilities irrelevant. The Valthian officers watching erupted in excited discussion, their cybernetic implants pulsing with new possibilities. "We've spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of conquest," Call said quietly. "But in less than a decade, your species has revolutionized the concept of defense itself." "Because we had to," Chen replied. "When we first detected your probes, we knew we couldn't match your empire's industrial capacity or your millennia of military experience. So we focused on developing systems that would make those advantages less relevant. And in doing so, you've given us something we hadn't even realized we were missing: the ability to grow beyond our own preconceptions." Call's cybernetic eyes tracked the human ships as they reset for another simulation. "Our empire has stood unchanged for so long, we'd forgotten that stability doesn't have to mean stagnation." Chen nodded. "That's why we're here today. Not to show off our technology, but to demonstrate that there's always room for evolution, always new ways to approach old problems. The adaptive matrix isn't just a defense system, it's a philosophy. One that suggests the best way to face the future is to be ready to change with it." As the next simulation began, Call watched the combined fleet move with even greater coordination than before. The Valthian ships were already incorporating lessons from the previous exercise, their organic systems resonating more naturally with the quantum field. "Perhaps," he mused, "this is what the first speaker meant when she said it was time for the Empire to evolve." 6 months after the joint training exercises, First Speaker Marion stood in Earth's orbital diplomatic station, watching the combined human-Valthian fleet conduct maneuvers against the backdrop of Saturn's rings. The sight still filled her with wonder. Sleek human vessels moving in perfect harmony with transformed Valthian bioships, their quantum fields resonating in patterns that would have been impossible a year ago. But today, wonder was overshadowed by concern. The holographic display before her showed something that threatened everything both civilizations had built: a massive void in space, spreading across the galaxy's outer rim, consuming light and matter alike. "The entity," Admiral Chen said quietly, stepping up beside her. "That's what our quantum sensors call it. A space-time anomaly that seems to be learning. Learning to consume more efficiently." Strategic Overseer Call added, his cybernetic systems processing the latest data streams. "It's already devoured 3 uninhabited systems. Its rate of expansion is increasing exponentially." Marion's biomechanical augments whirred as she processed the implications. "In all our history, we've never encountered anything like this. The Empire's standard protocols are useless here," Chen finished gently. just as our adaptive matrix alone isn't enough. But together, she gestured to another display, showing the results of their combined research team's efforts. The quantum resonance patterns of your bioships, Call explained, when combined with our AI processing networks, create something entirely new, a way to potentially communicate with the entity. The display showed complex mathematical models where Valthian organic technology interfaced with human quantum systems in ways that defied conventional physics. What had started as military cooperation had evolved into something far more profound, a true synthesis of their civilization's greatest achievements. We believe the entity isn't merely consuming, Chen continued. It's searching, testing different forms of matter and energy, almost like we did, Marion realized, when we first began exploring space, when we were trying to understand our place in the galaxy. Her form pulsed with the equivalent of a sad smile. We thought ourselves so advanced, yet we never considered that there might be forms of life so different from our understanding. An alert sounded. The entity had consumed another system, closer this time. The void in space grew perceptibly larger on their long-range sensors. The combined fleet is ready, Chen reported. Every ship equipped with the new quantum organic hybrid systems. But this isn't a battle we're heading into. It's a first contact scenario, unlike anything either of our species has attempted. Marion turned to face them both. 10,000 years of Valthian history taught us to control, to dominate, to enforce our view of civilization on the galaxy. In less than a year, humanity showed us a different path. And now, together, we face something that will require everything we've learned from each other. The fleet report's final preparations are complete, Call announced. The quantum organic resonance fields are stable. The AI networks are fully integrated with the bioship neural matrices. Chen smiled. A year ago, that sentence would have been impossible. Now it represents our best hope for the future. She turned to Marion. First speaker, the mission is ready for your authorization. Marion looked once more at the combined fleet. Humanity's quantum innovation seamlessly merged with Valthian organic technology, creating something greater than either civilization could have achieved alone. In the face of an existential threat, they had found not just cooperation, but true synthesis. Initialize the first contact protocols, she commanded. Let's show this entity that the galaxy has more to offer than consumption, that different forms of life and intelligence can find ways to grow together rather than destroy each other. As the fleet engaged its hybrid drives, preparing to confront the greatest challenge either civilization had faced, Marion reflected on how far they'd come. The Valthian Empire had ruled through power for 10,000 years. Humanity had hidden and developed in secret for decades. Yet here they were, embarking together on a mission to communicate with an intelligence so alien it challenged their fundamental understanding of life itself. Perhaps, she mused, watching the ships disappear into quantum space, this is what true civilization looks like. Not the dominance of one way of thinking, but the endless discovery of new ways to understand the universe and each other. The void waited at the edge of known space, but for the first time in galactic history, the response it would meet wasn't one of conquest or submission, but of cooperation and innovation. Humanity and the Valthians had learned to transcend their limitations by working together. Now they would attempt to share that lesson with something that existed beyond their comprehension of life itself. The future was uncertain, but they would face it as they had learned to face everything, together, adaptable, and ready to evolve.